On today's show, Yaroslav Askarov gets his wish. He's been dealt out of Nashville, but was the San Jose Sharks a good landing spot from a hobby perspective? We'll debate that and also list some potential hobby bounce back candidates for the upcoming NHL season. This is episode 18 of the Hockey Card Haven podcast. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome. This is the Hockey Card Haven podcast with myself, Mike Distefano, and my co-host, Anthony Santini, here to dive deep into the world of hockey card collecting, flipping, and investing. What's going on, Anth? How you feeling on a Wednesday?
What's up, buddy? Feeling pretty good. Had a great day at work and topped it off with a 5:30 tea time and a little dinner, and we're ready for the pod. So definitely fired up.
I never really understood how people could possibly work a 9 to 5 and then go out and get 9 holes in afterwards. That just that's insane to me that you
It
did that.
the craziest part is it always takes me like at least minimum 2 holes to get warm too, because from sitting all day in the chair, barely moving around, to instantly driving to the golf course and swinging a club is just I need to stretch my back like every time.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, I mean, I guess get those 9 holes in now while you can, because the summer's wrapping up, right? The winter's
Yep.
coming, the fall is coming for sure. And that means that hockey is well on its way. We had another big deal go down in the NHL this past week. Yaroslav Askarov, the talented young goaltender, gets his way, gets his wish. He wanted to be dealt, and he ends up in San Jose. Is there hobby impact with this deal? What does this mean for Askarov's market? We'll get into that in a little bit on today's show. And we're also going to be kind of taking a look and start projecting and looking forward towards the season. Like I said, it's only a few weeks away from training camp and things starting up. So we're going to look at, some rebound candidates for this upcoming year. So some guys who, maybe there was some hobby love or some hobby hype. They had their moment at points over the last couple of years, but coming off a down year or a down playoff, and their prices took a big hit, but we think has some potential to grow and to climb and to rebound this upcoming season. So we've both got some lists of guys who we believe could be in that bucket this upcoming year. So we'll get to that list also in a little bit. But I do want to start with the Askarov deal for today's show. So he's been traded to the San Jose Sharks. First round pick, prospect David Edstrom. The two main pieces going back to the Nashville Predators. I think Magnus Shrona, a goaltender, goaltending prospect, also going back the other way. And then Askarov, a third round pick, and another prospect going to the Sharks. So that's the deal from a hockey perspective. And I actually like it. Like for San Jose, you look at what they're building. I mean, they're clearly in a rebuild, and it's not a team that's going to be competitive anytime soon. But they added Macklin Celebrini in this draft. They added Will Smith at last year's draft. They've got Will Eklund. They've got a couple other young pieces who they like, who are kind of making their way through the system. And now they've got seemingly their goaltender of the future, if he can, flourish and grow into the goaltender that everyone thought he was when he was a top half of the first round pick a couple of years back. So from a hockey perspective, I think the San Jose Sharks, good on them for winning the sweepstakes here and solidifying their goaltender of the future position, because it was pretty bleak for San Jose. So he'll get an opportunity. He's going to be under siege every night, but he wanted to play in the NHL. He's going to play in the NHL. He's going to see a lot of rubber though. So we'll know real quick whether or not Askarov can get it done. But I like the bet from the Sharks. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to start off early too, like you said, facing a lot of rubber, and he wanted to play in the NHL, and this is going to be the exact task that's going to be handed to him come October with that starter role. I feel like you just have to peel the band-aid if you're the Sharks, give this guy the key and just kind of say, just drive away. We have 2, 3, 4 more years to still being relevant in our division, not even in the league right now. I don't think the Sharks are in a position right now where they're going to be able to make a big step, make a push for the playoffs next year, and kind of have that buzz come NHL time, or sorry, come October time. But I feel like this is a great fit for Askarov. The only other team that I could really see being another good fit would be the Chicago Blackhawks, who are also in a similar situation as the Sharks. But for what they were able to get Askarov for, I feel like this was a great deal. Looking back
Yeah,
2, 3, 4 weeks ago, when I heard that the Leafs were interested in Askarov, I heard Marner and a first round pick. I heard all kinds of crazy deals,
that
all
was
types of nonsense that when
yeah.
this deal finally broke through, I was like, okay, at least this sounded a little bit more level headed, a little bit more understandable considering Askarov's still a prospect, a good prospect at that. But I feel like this is a great, great fit for the Sharks.
Yeah, right. And now they've got a bunch of forwards, and now they believe their goalie of the future. Now they just got to focus on working that blue line, and yet you can start to see a good little nucleus being built in San Jose, and maybe that it won't be a long 10-year rebuild if all these guys can hit the way that they're projected to. I like what they're building out in San Jose and adding a goaltender with the pedigree at least, or the potential of what Askarov could be. Really, really solid addition. Now, this is the Hockey Card Haven podcast, so we got to look at it from a hockey perspective now, or a hobby perspective rather. Do you believe that this trade to the San Jose Sharks has better long-term value for him than if he were to have remained in Nashville?
I think long term for sure. 100%. When I look 5, 10 years down the road, as long as he projects to what he's exactly supposed to be in the NHL, and that's a top 5, top 10 goaltender, hands down. That's what he was drafted as. That's what he was
Well,
traded as. And I feel like that's what he's going to be top 10 years down the road, a top 10 NHL goaltender when it comes down to, when you're talking about fantasy goaltenders, players in the hobby, goalies in the hobby. And I'm not saying top 10 goaltenders of all time, but
I
I'm
know. I'm
saying,
just saying, you're saying top 5, top 10 goalie hands down. I'm like, oh, goalies are voodoo, man. You never know what these guys. I
yeah,
mean, never know what these dudes get. Jack Campbell was a top 10 pick at one
he
point.
was.
Yeah, Jonathan Bernier was a top 10 pick at one point. There's been a lot of guys, a lot of goalies who have flamed. Ilya Samsonov was a first round pick. So
Yeah, and we saw how that turned out last year with the Leafs. I mean, either way, from a hobby perspective, in the short term, I do think this is going to soften his market for a couple months down the road. I know there was a little bit of a spike that we're going to get into, but I feel like the Nashville Predators were a decent fit considering it sounded like Saros was on his way out a couple months ago. Maybe Askarov could have made the jump if Saros was moved, but it ends up being Saros signs a long-term deal. Skarov's stuck in the minors, and he needs to be moved, and that's exactly what happened. In the long run, I feel like if you're collecting Askarov cards, it's a good investment. He's going to be the starter of the Sharks for what's going to be the foreseeable future for a team that is, not to blatantly say, not very competitive in when it comes to who's going to be involved in the playoffs next year. So down the road, long term, I feel like it's going to be a great investment for him.
I think it's better for him now. It's better for him 5 years from now, and I think it'll be better for him 10 years from now. So all around, from a hobby
Yeah.
perspective, I think it's better. Like I think it's a lateral move in terms of market. Like when we talk about market, this isn't Lion A going to Montreal and all of a sudden, the market cap explodes. I don't think that's necessarily what we're seeing here, but there's opportunity for him to actually play and be seen. That wasn't going to happen in Nashville. Like
Yeah.
this past summer, they signed UC Saros to an 8-year deal. Like you give UC Saros 8 million over 8 years, there's like he's going to play a lot of games, right? Askarov was not going to end up playing a lot, and the best he could have asked for at some point is maybe 2-3 years from now he works himself into like a 1B scenario or like a strong 2 where he gets to play 30 to 35 games. But now he has an opportunity to be a starter, and in order to be Robbie a hobby relevant in as a goaltender in this market, you have to play, you have to stop pucks, and you have to win games. And yes, they're not going to win a whole lot of games right now, but at least he's going to be in the NHL. Like when he was when he was with Nashville, they were telling him like there's a good chance you're going to be in the minors playing for the Milwaukee Admirals. That wouldn't have been great for his cards. Absolutely. So at least in the NHL, there's still going to be that hype. There's still going to be the shine of prospect. Even if he's allowing goals and getting lit up, people are going to say, well, it's a bad team. And they're still going to see him as that potential. That hype and that potential is still going to drive a market, I believe, for Yaroslav Askarov. And then if this team does turn out to be pretty solid and he projects to be, the number one goaltender that he was drafted to be, hey, we've seen Russian goaltenders sell well in this hobby, right?
Ooh,
Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin at times had sold well. Andrei Vasilevsky sells very well. So, not to say that Askarov is going to be one of those top goaltenders, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he can become, like you said, a top 10 goalie at some point, have some hobby relevancy, and we could see some market for him. Why don't we kind of break down what the market is currently for Askarov right now? A 2023-24 Series 1 Young Guns card number 204. So this one just came out like this past year. He's one of the top 5 chases, I would say, probably from Series 1. There was a couple goalies. There was Askarov and Dustin Wolf, both of which now getting opportunities to be number ones this upcoming season. A PSA 10 pop count of 284, which is a gem rate of just 41%. So 41.22% gem rate right now. And I'm going to pull up, you sent me over a graphic. Let me just pull this up here. And this is of it was before and after, right?
yep,
Before and after
correct.
sales. Yes, here it is. So we got before and after sales of the trade. So before the trade, you're looking at about an $82 Young Guns for PSA 10s of Yaroslav Askarov. You're looking in the $80 range. That was sold June 20th. So like right in and around the end of the Cup final. But well after they were eliminated, I suppose. After the trade was made, August 23rd, you got a sale, $162. Buy it now. And there's plenty bids too that was selling in
Mhm.
the 130 to 140, 150 range. I even saw on bids too. So it's not even like it's just one sale at that. There's been multiple sales and people were looking to buy up some Askarov and maybe he's getting that little Celebrini shine to him in a way that some guys got last year from Connor Bedard. I don't know if that maybe is something to do with it. But clearly you can see there's a near like double in price almost from June till now, just based off of a simple trade. So that's kind of crazy and wild. But that's the hobby, brother. And then that's what we love about this hobby.
Yeah, it's wild too to think a goaltender's market could go for oh my god, man, like, this is one of the first times that we've seen a goaltender get traded in an immediate hobby buzz, hobby boom. We didn't even see this with Markstrom. I know Markstrom doesn't have too many young guns or future watches, but we talked about it on the pod. We haven't really seen too many goaltenders have.
Markstrom A doesn't have a young gun, so there wasn't a
Right.
lot of he was weird. His rookie year was like 12, 13. So there's just like not a
Yeah.
lot of rookie product. And also it was like right after the cup final. There was so much going on and he's a little older. So there's not, like the future like prospect shine to it, right? That hype
Yeah.
isn't there in terms of this guy could be a top 5 dude, right? Like I want to make sure that I get in on that. Markstrom, there's like that's already gone. Like he's already that, right?
Yeah.
So there's no reason to pick him up now because there's not much growth, I guess, that's probably left in it. But for a young guy like Askarov, there is.
Yeah, there's still a lot of room left in him, and I wanted to bring up the discussion too, and you actually segued into it perfectly. I want to propose a question to you to say, I have two goaltenders for you. The first being Askarov, and the second being Logan Thompson. Both of
Okay.
them were traded in this offseason, but obviously have different prices. PSA 10s vary. Obviously, Washington and San Jose are in different positions, but relatively Logan Thompson, who's a couple years ahead of Askarov, but has already established himself as a competitive goaltender in the league. I'm not saying he's
Cup
top
winner.
20. Hey, he's a cup winner. He has it under his belt, but what makes him different from Askarov? I mean, obviously the age being the biggest difference that slaps you in the face, but really to say that Askarov is almost 3 to 4 times the price of Logan Thompson, does it really make sense?
To me, yes. To me, it
Okay.
does. Does it make sense to you?
I'd say no. I'd
Why?
say no. I think there's still a lot of growth left in Logan Thompson's game. He's a cheaper young gun option on a team that's kind of trending up, looking to have a final push for Ovechkin in what is maybe 3 years left for him max. So I
Yeah,
feel like if you're looking to invest right now and you're looking at a goaltender that can make a splash come, maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road, if he does keep the net, I feel like Logan Thompson could be a better investment. That's my argument.
yeah, I would. Well, are they the same price right now? Sorry, what's the price difference at this point?
So about a Logan Thompson Young Guns Raw goes for about $5 compared to
So
an
raw.
Askarov going for $20.
Yeah, I think it's you can get like 15-ish usually is right around where like Askarov was had, but yeah, now after the trade, he's about a $20-25 young gun. I'd imagine that price will go down a little bit back to 15-20 bucks. Um, I probably honestly would like I think Askarov has the much higher ceiling. Like this
Yeah,
when we talk about prospect shine, like
yeah,
I think Askarov, there's a lot more people know who that is ultimately. And
yeah,
and if you're walking the show floor and you're like, oh, that was supposed to be the Russian Carey Price. Like that was people were talking about him that way when he was 16 years old. So I think for that reason, like he'll always kind of have some lore to him. Whereas Logan Thompson, like this guy was playing at Brock University 6 years ago.
hey,
Like
hey,
no disrespect. Go Badgers. No
go
disrespect.
Badgers. Let's go.
And I think right now he's like the backup to Charlie Lindgren, so he's gonna have to win the net. Whereas right now it's Askarov is still young and he'll probably still have to battle with Mackenzie Blackwood for that net. But I think they've pinpointed Askarov's going to be the goalie of the future there. Whereas Logan Thompson, we'll kind of wait and see.
Yeah,
Like there's Logan Thompson doesn't have that pedigree as a prospect as
yeah.
Askarov does. So I'd personally still rather roll with Askarov. I know you're a
Th
Logan Thompson guy, if you're fellow Badger alumnus, but I like
I
I like Askarov better.
I do think Logan Thompson too, his young gun is a little bit undervalued, going in around $30 to $40 in a PSA 10. I mean, compared to that 120 range to
Not bad.
160 that we're seeing
Yeah.
for Askarov, that's where my conversation comes into place, and you can say, "Okay, if I could pick up 5 Logan Thompson young guns for the price of 1 Askarov."
If I had to make that choice today, I
Yeah,
mean, Askarov prices are obviously inflated and
yeah,
higher than they will be in 3 months. So today, yes, I will take the one that's, not full of hype right now. But like once it settles in to probably back into maybe 120, 100, 120 bucks for an Askarov Young Guns. Like I think it'll be higher than the 80 that it was before the trade. I think it'll probably get up to like 100, 110 possibly, and that's where it'll kind of sit. I would rather that at 150, 160. Yeah, I'll take the Logan Thompson, but if Askarov settles back in, then I'll definitely that's where I feel more comfortable with that one.
fair, fair. The only other player that I really wanted to compare this deal to was Spencer Knight too. I want to have a quick conversation too because their
Yeah,
prices were relatively similar. Askarov and Spencer Knight were pretty close, and now that there
yeah.
was this deal, it kind of brings up another situation with another young goalie prospect that
Is
hasn't really
Knight
found.
where's Knight's market at right now? I thought it was shot in the toilet.
No, not too bad actually. Still around 10 to 15 Young Guns for sorry, 10 to $15 for a Young Guns Raw and about 65 to $80 for a PSA 10. And they've been trending up too. Like it's been moving up.
Yeah, he's in an interesting spot. Like last year, he was in the player assistance program, so didn't get a chance to. Now, it actually wasn't even. So I guess he had really been battling some massive headache issues So that was actually, I think, the problem. I know when we think player assistance, it usually is like, substance abuse, what we
Yeah.
think about. But I remember I was listening to an interview, and somebody was clarifying that it was actually like massive migraines that he was experiencing, and it just completely, or maybe it's anxiety. I think maybe it was just mass anxiety, actually, not
I
migraines, anxiety. Sorry,
the
and it almost took his, like, he just, that's all he was thinking about. And I think he needed to kind of step away from the game, but I think he's got it under control now. They've kind of helped him out, went through some, the program, I guess. So the thing is, we don't know what Spencer Knight is at this point. So
yeah.
I'd be weary on his market, just because I don't know where we're at, and I think that's still a little pricey for me on a wait and see.
Yeah. It's fair. It's a good
Like, I'll take Logan
conversation too.
Thompson. I'll take Logan Thompson. Like, if I'm like, power ranking them, I guess I go Askarov, Logan Thompson, then Spencer Knight.
Yeah, I'd agree too. For sure, I'd agree. But I feel like don't sleep on Logan Thompson and these prices too. Don't if you could see
Not
him for
sleeping.
30.
I think they're both decent. Like, I'd say they're both buys, I
Yeah.
guess.
I
You
don't know
know?
if Spencer Knight's a buy. Because even looking
No, no,
at
no.
his
I meant
comps
Askarov.
right.
I meant
Oh,
Askarov.
right. I was gonna
Not
say
now, not right now. But what
yeah,
he said.
For Knight to be like an $80 Young Gun PSA 10, I feel like that's still a little bit high. A lot of people are still optimistic on him,
Yeah,
but you know,
that's a
all in
sell
all,
for me.
it was a good trade for San Jose. So I feel like his market will, take a big jump come a couple years from now.
If anyone wants any Spencer Knight Young Guns, I've got like 9 or 10 of them, so hit me up. Hit me up.
Hey,
I have a good deal. Give a good, what are they going for? 15? $10, 10 a
like
piece.
10 to $15. Actually, there's a
Yeah.
couple sales for 100 and a PSA 10 too.
I don't got no PSAs, but I do got some raw ones I can give to, for a good price for anyone who wants it. Anyways, all right, let's get to these rebound candidates, because this is gonna be a fun little exercise. Um So we're looking at players who once had some hobby buzz, lost it, that we believe could regain some love with a bit of a bounce back season in 2024-25. So the guys on this list, once Robbie hobby, I keep mixing that up for whatever reason. Once hobby relevant, with whether it was, speculative or performative pickups over the past couple of years, but have since fallen in price after a bit of a down year, but we believe could be poised for a good bounce back year on the ice and in turn in the hobby. So a good example of what we saw happen last year when we talk about rebound candidates, Alexis Lafreniere. I think you look at, or Lafreniere, you look at, how high he was right off the top, which, it was, COVID hit, and it was the first cards came out, and it was insane at that point. But like, these young guns go for like $300, but then they just plummeted and kept plummeting and kept plummeting. And last year you could get his young guns for like 20, $25.
Yeah.
And then he had a great kind of back half of the season, a solid playoff, and then that card kind of resurged, and then you're, spending 25, $60 on a raw young guns, and upwards of over $200 on a PSA 10, 250 I think it got to, at one point throughout the playoffs for a PSA 10 Laffy, and he was like $150 card before
Yeah.
the playoffs, in a PSA 10. So that's a good example of someone who had a good bounce back, in terms of hobby relevancy. So we've got a good list of players here that we believe could be candidates this upcoming season. Obviously, this is not financial advice. We are not saying go pick these guys up now. We just believe, hey, these guys have those bounce back candidates. Like, just because they were poor last year, their market's kind of in the gutter. Maybe you could make a play and you could pick up on some of those. And if they get off to a hot start, or they make a good run, score a bunch of goals, have a hat trick one night, and they're all over ESPN and Sports Center, those markets are going to start to get a little hot, and you could take advantage if you picked them up at their low right now. So let's get things started here, Anth. We've both got 3 players that we want to talk about a little bit, so I'll let you start. Give me one of your guys.
Hey, number 1 starting off was, a big, big down year for him, and I feel like it started down year, I'd say, for his market. Kirill Kaprizov, because he still had 96 points last season, and I feel like he is capable of exploding this year on a Minnesota team that has all the potential in the world, all that offensive firepower, but Kaprizov's market really did soften big time. For a young gun raw that was going for around $160 has dropped to around $50. Like, you could pick him up all day long at card shows for 50 bucks. I don't care what the comps are. You see them all the time at card shows, 50, 60 bucks in that range. Very popular in a PSA 10, very popular to grade and very easy to grade too. We've had this conversation on the pod before. Pop counts, gem rates. It's a great card to pick up and grade. The percentages on it is pretty good. PSA 10 averages around 180, topping out around $200, and I feel like he's a big, big play come October time.
I believe he is the second highest. For a while, he was the highest graded PSA 10 young guns out there. And Jack Hughes this past summer had surpassed him. And Connor Bedard very, very close to surpassing both of those guys. Let me check it and see, if GemRate still kind of has that information. See if we can find that info really quickly. But yeah, Kirill Kaprizov, massive, massive, uh, massive bounce back could be coming for his hobby. I like that pick a lot because that it took a little bit of a hit. Definitely took a little bit of a hit. My first guy is another player who was massive when these cards first came out. You think about his young guns back in 2021, Series 2. It's Trevor Zegras. This was a $300 card when it first came out. Him and Cole Caulfield, everyone was chasing him. I sat here in this exact room I'm sitting in right now, and ripped open a full case rather of this of the product, trying to get my hands on these bad boys. And I did. Took me like 9 boxes to find my first Zegras, but I found one. And now you could pick those up for about $15 for a Trevor
Yeah.
Zegras Young Guns raw. And even a PSA 10 for a while, these cards were decent, going for 250, 300. Like they've really just been going down in price, down, down, down. But again, at one point, this was a 4, 350, 300, then 250, and now it's down to about $100. $108 was the last sale for a PSA 10 of Trevor Zegras, and it's because he had a terrible year last season. I mean, legitimately, Trevor Zegras. Do you know how many goals Zegras scored last year? By the way, I'm just gonna quickly quiz you, see if you
I
know the
think
answer to this.
I think it's like 7. It's not a lot.
Trevor Zegras last year. Now, granted, he was hurt and he only played 31 games. I will grant you that. He only scored 6 goals last season for a total of 15 points in 31 games. So even if though like 6 goals in 31 games, let me extrapolate that over an 82 game
Oh,
season.
that's
What would it be?
terrible.
It,
It's
it,
a I
it's
think
I'm doing it right now. That's a 16 goal season. That's a 16 goal season on via 82. I just did the math. It's all good. I got it. 16 goals.
Hey, I was ready. The calculator was ready to go.
So is mine. It's in my phone and I got it. Like, but he had 6 goals last year and he was injured a lot and his market just absolutely tanked. Nobody wants Trevor Zegras right now. I think there's a strong chance that he could have a bounce back year. I think that this is a team that's on the up and up. If he stays healthy, he ends up teaming up now with Mason McTavish. Those two could definitely do something. They've got some good young defense who can get him the puck. He's I don't want to call him a show pony. I think that's mean of him to say, but he's got a lot of skill. Very skilled player. And I think that he's someone who could put up some offense and put up some points and find himself on the Sports Center and ESPN loops, in the morning, very much like we did with the Zegras goal a couple of years back. So, I think that he's someone who could probably at some point, if he goes on a run, he starts picking up points. Not surprising if he doubles from that $13 raw sale that I'm looking at right now and becomes a $25-$30 raw Young Guns. I think he's someone who could definitely see that type of bounce back this season after a really, really, really tough year last year.
Yeah. It makes way too much sense too. Like his marketability for the NHL and how much people know about him, how flashy he is, and the potential that he has to go out on a nightly basis and give you those highlight reels that you'll see all morning when you're having breakfast, when you're driving to work, you hear everyone on the radio talking about it. He has that potential. And I feel like if you could scoop him for around that $10 range, and
Yeah,
even if you see them for under $10, grab them
all
because like
day.
you said, 25 to $30 can happen and it can happen really fast. So if you were picking them up for $10 all off season and out of nowhere it's mid-Christmas time, mid-December, and you see them going for 25 to $30, that's a double triple on your investment. So
Yeah.
a really, really good opportunity here with Zegras as we head into the season.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Even PSA 10s, like if you can get them for 100 or scoop them for under 100,
Yeah.
that's I think a worthwhile play as well. All right, what's another one you got?
So the second one I have is Tage Thompson, who we've talked about in last week's, or I believe 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about Savoy, talking about the Sabres and what Thompson kind of brings to that team. Because Tage Thompson, who used to be one of the highest risers we've ever seen in the history of the hobby, going from $1 Young Gun all the way up to 100 plus for a raw.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous, the hype that was going on, the way that he was scoring, the release that he had, that clap bomb, it was ridiculous. So for me, when I was looking up what his PSA 10s are going for, I saw two comps sell for $100 Canadian. PSA
Mm,
10 PSA 10 Tage Thompson, it's ridiculous. That's a little bit too cheap for me considering what he used to be at and what he's capable of. The hobby has really, really they were way too fast, I think, to react to his down year, but I feel like he has a lot in store considering the Sabres are really ready to make a big move here.
I like Tage Thompson a lot. It's a really good pick because I believe that the Buffalo Sabres are poised to finally have that breakout season. I think they finally got it right in goal. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen looks to be legit. Devin Levi's a good young goalie. They've been adding to that blue line for a couple of years, and now hopefully they can all just stay healthy, and Tage Thompson can continue to score some goals, get back to being a big 40 goal scorer guy. And hey, goals, they do a lot for you. They
Oh,
do a lot for you, especially in the hobby. So yeah, I think Tage Thompson for sure is another one of those guys who can see who can see a big rebound this upcoming year. How about Matty Beniers, Anthony?
hey,
Matty Beniers.
I'm sold.
Former number 2 overall pick back in 2021. He got paid, picked up a brand new contract by the Seattle Kraken, over $7 million after a terrible, terrible season. 77 games, had just 37 points after putting up 57 in his second season. Really his rookie season, actually, because his first year he only played 10 games at the end of the year after college. So his first full season in the NHL, he had 57 points in 80 games, and then a big drop off, just 15 goals, down from 24, and just 37 points, 20 less than the year before in 77 games, a dash 11 too, which is not fun. I think that Matty Beniers, he's somebody who showed in year one that he can be a terrific hockey player, really solid two-way guy. I think he's shown that he can score you 30 plus goals a season. And I think he's gonna end up being like the number one chase, the number one guy in Seattle. It's a new market, but I think it's a good market. So I believe Matty Beniers, again, when he first came out, hot, hot, hot player that people were trying to pick up a couple of years back in 22-23. I think he was series 2 in 22-23. And now you can pick him up. It's like $15. He was like a $50-$60 Young Guns just 2 years ago. And now he's a $15 Young Guns, a former number 2 overall pick just 2 years ago. So, yeah, I think Matty Beniers is a guy for sure. I like him a lot. So even for $110 for a PSA 10, I think is a very worthwhile
Cheap.
pickup at that price. So Matt Beniers for me, I expect for him to or I think I shouldn't say expect, but they expect a bounce back considering the money that the Seattle Kraken just gave him. And I think get ahead of it. Get ahead of it. I think
Yeah.
you won't be mad about that.
Good call too. I mean, like you said, I don't think there's much of a market to rival Matty Beniers too with the players that are on that team. The only player that I could see, and I know you know him, is Shane Wright, but I
Yeah,
feel like honestly the hobby would react almost like a Patrick Kane, Jonathan Tays type of deal. Two players, stars of the team. I mean, obviously the potential is there. What they're capable of is obviously there. We haven't seen that out of either of them. Obviously, Beniers came out flying in his rookie year, had that sophomore slump.
and Beniers was also the first ever draft pick of the Seattle Kraken too. So like
Yeah.
he'll always have kind of, there'll be that tie to the Kraken
It's not like, Cody Glass, I think, who was the first ever rookie drafted, who kinda
for the
took
Vegas
a little
Golden
bit.
Knights.
Hey, we talked about him too, though. I like Cody Glass. I'm
Yeah.
investing in him too a little bit. I'll
Yeah,
dabble a little bit,
that's
but
your low end bounce back, a little Cody Glass action.
hey,
Where you end up? Pittsburgh, right? He ended up in Pittsburgh?
he's in Pittsburgh. He just got traded. Could be on a line with, Sid the Kid, or maybe in the bottom of the lineup. Could find himself playing with Rucker McGroarty and maybe turn his career
Possibly.
around, so we'll see.
Possibly. All right, give me your third player, Anth.
And you know what? My third player, I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here just because next
Mhm.
week is football season, which I'm fired up for. We got to talk a little bit of football too when it comes fantasy football time, little segment or something. But calling an audible, I'm going to go with Tim Stutzel here because I have been invested in Stutzel all off season, and I feel like he still has that potential to be a star player in this league. I'm not saying a star player on this team. I'm saying a star player like in his division in this league, one of the most offensively talented players that I've watched personally up front. He's not an all around player, which really doesn't sell me as a leader per se. But watching him play offensively, how smart he is with the puck, I watched him play against New York, I believe in February in person just a couple months ago. And I was sold. I was sold right away watching him play from the house, in person, everything. He's been a great player that I've noticed, and I feel like his market is really, really softened up in the past year. PSA 10 going for around $90 to $110. It's way too cheap considering what he's capable of on a Canadian market. Way too cheap.
Yeah, I remember, there was another guy who at one point, yeah, was going for like, 250 if you were
250,
lucky, but like between 2 and 250 regularly. Like, I think it was the last fall expo. It was like if you could find him for 170, that was a good deal. That was a good buy at that point. Turned out to not be a great buy because he did decline from that price, obviously. But now, if you can get him at sub $100 for a PSA 10, yeah, dude, that's criminal. How cheap that is. So I'm with you. That's a really good bounce back candidate for sure. Another one of those teams, similarly to Buffalo that was looking to make that step, right? Make that step, and if the Ottawa Senators do that, it's probably because Tim Stützle, had a big year for them. So
yeah.
uh, I like that pick as well. My final pick, it's another superstar, Swedish superstar at that. Mine's Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver
Oh,
Canucks. Yeah, look, Petey's had his moments a couple of times in this sport. We reference it all the time. Last year it was at the Fall Expo, actually the exact same one that we were talking about for um for Stützle. There was no player that saw their market rise in that room that weekend more than Elias Pettersson. The only one who maybe rivaled it was William Nylander, if I recall. But Elias Pettersson went from being a $200 to $250 young gun to like $400 in a PSA 10 over the weekend in Toronto at the Expo in fall. It was wild how much people were picking this guy up, and it's because he got off to such a good start last year. The team got off to an unbelievable start, and it was really because of him. And it was like, man, this guy. this guy could turn into a top 10 player in the NHL. Like he does have that type of skill. He's got that type of that to that those he's got that skill set, I guess. That's the only word that's coming to mind for me right now. And you could pick him up for as cheap as $150 right now in a PSA 10. $150 for an Elias Pettersson PSA 10. That was about what like the 9.5s were going for. That's cheaper than what the 9.5s were going for back then. You could get a BGS 9.5 about $180 is what that was selling for back that weekend. Now you can get a PSA 10, and we know that those are basically, usually worth like double. If you want to get BGS, you can get BGS too, by the way. I mean, it doesn't always have to be PSA. I'm pretty sure BGS 9.5 goes, for sub 100 right
Yeah,
now for Elias Pettersson, which I still think is a good price because I think that's a card that could probably reach $150 if this PSA 10 for Pettersson gets back into the 250 range. I think 250 for your PSA, 150 for your BGS. Those are about the prices that I could see this card getting to if Pettersson rebounds after the really tough season he had last year. And it wasn't really a bad regular season. Like the points were there. I think he finished with like 89 points. He was over a point per game, but he was invisible the last like 6 weeks of the season, and it carried into the playoffs. He had just one goal in the playoffs through 2 rounds, and really a big reason why the team got eliminated in round one. So, that really hurt his hobby value. But I think going into this year, they picked up Jake DeBrusk, who I think is a perfect complement for Pettersson as a player. I think that we'll see him, have a nice little bounce back year. He's got a big fat contract now to try and live up to. So I like Pettersson a lot. I think he's super cheap right now, and he's someone who could definitely rebound after a tough playoff. Took a hit to his cards. I think next year we could see a rebound out of him.
yeah. A good call for Pedersen too, considering what they were going for, like you mentioned in the fall, is so crazy. I remember being in those trade nights, and if you had a Pedersen Young Guns, it was legitimately like liquid gold. Like you can move that
Dude.
thing no problem, especially PSA 10s, Beckett Raw, whatever it was. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, it was that those the 2 players that well, I guess 3. Matthews is always liquid, but, like,
Yeah.
Elias Pettersson and William Nylander, those were, like, the 2 people
Yeah.
who pe that
Nylander.
you wanted to pick up because Nylander on the Friday night had, I think, a three-point performance. He scored 2 goals, and it was like, "Whoa," like, this guy like he got off to a good start last year, a really hot start, obviously. But like the Friday night, he scored 2 goals, and then on
Yeah.
Saturday, all of a sudden, it went from like raw, you're paying about $40 for a Willie Raw, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is now a $60 to $70 card raw, any price tag on it. It's like, oh geez, okay. And I remember walking around jokingly, I would see someone who had like a Willie, like PSA 10 future watch or whatever, and it had like a $400 sticker on it. I was like, what that sticker say yesterday?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, 300, we got to stick with the times. Or somebody like, oh, nothing. I didn't change it at all. It's actually a really good price. It's probably undervalued. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
same as the guy 2 tables down. But anyway, Patterson, same boat. So yeah, I think right now it's he's a good price. He's a good buy. I've picked up a couple throughout the course of the off season.
Yeah.
All right, a couple honorable mentions that I have. I think Dylan Cousins could be primed for a good bounce back. I think Shane Pinto is another guy too. Like if Tim Stutzla and the Ottawa Senators have themselves a good season. I think that's because Shane Pinto turned out to be a solid player for them. Dawson Mercer is another player I think could have a good bounce back year for the New Jersey Devils. You think Jack Hughes will see a bounce back, by the way? Because we've seen Jack Hughes's market go down a little bit after a rocket start last year. Like the first 2 weeks, I mean, you saw his cards just explode, and then the injury came, and he hasn't really been able to get it back. Like I remember last year, I think it was like October, November. You were trying to buy raw Hughes off me for like $200 a pop, 200
Yeah.
bucks a pop for a raw Hughes. Now you can kinda get that in a PSA 10 for almost that
Yeah,
price,
you
like
probably could.
250, 260 is about what I've seen a lot of Jack Hughes PSA 10 sales at. So, again, another player though that at one point, was a $300 to $400 card. So I wonder if Jack Hughes has a little bit of rebound ability in his market this year.
I think it does, but I don't think it will do what it did last year. You remember when the Devils were on that massive, was it 20 game win streak or whatever it was, 16, 17 game win streak? That's when Jack Hughes, his market was just booming. I remember I had
Yeah.
Jesper Bratt in fantasy. Everyone was booming. It was ridiculous. And like you said, when I was trying to buy him last year, I think I ended up buying, so it was like Jack Hughes Young Guns for anywhere from like 170 to 180. And then we were trying to get it done for two. You weren't budging. And then I went to go grade them. I ended up doing pretty well with grading, but they were going for around 450 to $500. Like I think I
Crazy.
sold in a lot deal a couple for 400 or whatever it was. Like they were insane.
Yeah, and that's why now you look and it's the highest populated PSA 10 young guns in existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another reason why I think the market took a bit of a hit too. Overpopulated young guns in comparison to some other ones. So maybe that's why people aren't forking out the money they used to for Jack Hughes. Very very high supply of his PSA 10s when it comes to the young guns. All right, so fun. I like it. Hopefully we hit on a couple of these guys. Would be nice. You know, we've
Yeah.
got Trevor Zegras, Matty Beniers, Elias Pettersson. Anthony had Kirill Kaprizov, Tage Thompson, and Tim Stutzla. So we'll see. And then again, the honorable mentions, maybe Cousins, Shane Pinto, Dawson Mercer, and maybe even a Jack Hughes could possibly have some bounce back candidacy to him. All right. Fun stuff. Fun stuff for sure. Want to get to some show and tell because you've got a couple things that you want to get to. What'd you pick up this weekend?
Biggest pickup was, this Austin Matthews Young Guns Raw. Trying to pick
Oh,
up as many as I can because you know me, I'm trying to pick up Matthews, and I feel like every season the past 2 years, it comes November, December, January, and I say, "You know what? Why was I not buying Matthews all off season?" Like, it just makes too much sense. Captain of the Leafs now, probably gonna end up scoring 50 goals this season is what I'm shooting for. Leafs will probably make the playoffs, and there's obviously gonna be buzz in the Toronto area. So stacking up on as many Austin Matthews as I could get my hands on for a reasonable price. For a
yes.
reasonable.
Yes.
So that
Always
was
that
the biggest
multiplier.
pickup.
Nice. I another week I did not pick anything up, but
Well, no.
I will have pickups next week because I will be going to the Labor Day show at Michelangelo's in Hamilton on Monday. For anyone who wants to go, if you see myself, are you heading to that show or no?
I'm gonna try. So I'm undecided. I'm gonna see how the weekend goes, but I feel like I might be ending up there. We'll see what happens. So hopefully we could both catch up there, and there should be some good pickups because I feel like this is one of the last big shows besides CSC before the NHL season gets underway.
Yeah, honestly, I think so. Like, yeah, there's the CSC shows at the 22nd. The
22nd,
CSC
September 22nd at the International Center at the Mississauga Convention Center.
Yeah, so you got that one, which would be a pretty sizable show, and yes, Michelangelo is going to be a sizable show, and then there's a bunch of other shows going on throughout the GTA and wherever you are, obviously throughout Canada and the United States of America, and actually, there's a couple of people that listen across the pond too. I don't know how many hockey card shows they're having down there, but hopefully you find somewhere to do some buying, selling, and trading um, in person and not just always online. But should be a fun weekend. I'll definitely have pickups for all y'all next week for sure.
Beautiful.
Anything else you want to say before we jet?
Hey, that's it for me. I mean, it's gonna be a little bit of a slow weekend, long weekend, so not too much hobby stuff going on for me. But hopefully, I could cap off the long weekend before I start school next week. Because hey,
Mhm.
we're back in school next week, so gotta lock
Well,
in.
I'm an old man, so I'm not back in school, but you are back in school, you
Back on
spring
campus,
chicken.
baby. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. Enjoy your long weekends, everybody. Hopefully, everyone can get up to some good fun this upcoming Labor Day. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe right here on YouTube, and you can also listen to us on the go, available on Spotify now as well. We'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of the Hockey Card Haven podcast.